Bom, thank you very much, Gonzalo. It was very good to learn about the experience in Uruguay. So the idea we have now is actually for you to ask questions. The questions will be, I believe you can handwrite the questions and someone will collect them from you. And then I will pass the questions to Gonzalo. So before we start, I know that you'll be writing now. I would like to ask one question to Gonzalo, which is basically, Uruguay, as you mentioned, is a small country. So you managed to do that project in a way that is less challenging, for instance, for a country like Brazil, in which you have to extend it for a large territory divided into too many states with procurement rules. What is the experience that you have learned, especially in terms of procurement, governmental purchases, and how do you think they can apply to other countries as well?
Well, yes, Uruguay is small relative to Brazil, but as I said, it's a bit like eating an elephant. You have to divide it into chunks that you can manage. I understand that Brazil is in a way a lot of different procurement organizations, procurement rules. In Uruguay, of course, we have it simple. We have a single national entity. It's quite centralized in a lot of ways. But I think that the key success factors have been, one, very strong high-level support from the president down. Plan Ceibal is a presidential program. So that helped iron out any resistances, or a lot of resistances that were there at the beginning. You have to be very clear about the role of technology. We're trying to work with the teachers from the beginning, even though we had to make something happen that the teachers had to, in a way, we forced them to accept it. We gave the children the laptops first. We started with the children. We created a demand for the teachers to have to adapt. It was disruptive. It caused resistance. We had protests. We had people complaining. We have people complaining still now that the money could be better spent in repairing the roofs of the schools. But we think that, yes, the roofs of the school have to be repaired, but it doesn't take away from the need to use technology as an accelerator and to fill those gaps that we have.
Right. Do we have questions already? Obrigado. Tem uma questão do Fábio, question from Fábio Meirelles, eu acredito. I'm going to translate for you because I think it's easier. Yeah. You mentioned that the experience of Uruguay first connected the schools and then later distributed the equipment and the laptops. Do you think this should be necessarily the order in which the public policy should be structured?
In Uruguay, we went pari passu. I mean, we were connecting schools and deploying the laptops school by school or department by department in a pari passu. It's not that we connected all the schools and then we roll out. Yes, I think it's fundamental. Also, you got to remember where we were. In 2007, 2008, when we started, the iPads were not there. The iPhones were not there. There was no smartphones. We were talking about small computers. It was broadband then, but it's not broadband now. And it was in order to make it, the computers have very limited memory. We couldn't give a lot of content through the computers. We had the goal was to get the traction through the internet. It was opening the window of internet that had the traction immediately.
How did you make the connectivity get into the schools? Did you have a broadband plan specifically for schools, or is it just like a general broadband plan in Uruguay?
No, we took advantage of the fact that in Uruguay we have a state monopoly of internet connection at home and for public offices, which is a state telephone company. they were pushing strongly the rollout of ADSL and then fiber optics. So we got on top of that, and we asked them to direct it to schools first. Whenever they connected a neighborhood through ADSL or to fiber optics afterwards, we routed them towards the school. We pay for that. And then from the school gate onwards, we design the connectivity inside. We purchase the access points, we purchase the servers, we do the layout, we implement the connectivity inside schools.
Is it high speed?
Yes, I mean now we've got something like out of the 3,000 schools in Uruguay, we've got 3,000 schools, 400 are high schools, and they're located in towns and cities. Of the 2,400 primary schools, half of those schools are in towns and cities, and they have 95% of the children population. We've got another 1,200 schools that have less than 5%. Those are the rural schools. So we've got fiber optics in most urban schools. Where we don't have fiber optics, we've got ADSL, we've got WiMAX, we've got 3G, 4G, Edge even, and we even have some satellite connections where we cannot have anything else.
Do you know the average of the speed? Because I'm asking because Brazil is now worried about connectivity in the schools. And in average, the Brazilian schools are connected often with a very low speed, very poor quality. How did you manage to improve quality for the schools?
Well, with fiber optics, we've got two speeds, where basically 3010 and 1010. In ADSL, it comes down to 4.1, and then in 3G and 4G is whatever we get, because we're basically competing with for the airwaves. There's no direct, there's no tunneling. Satellite, of course, is the narrowest of the bands, and it's 1 megabyte in theory. In reality, it can be a lot less.
I see. We got some more questions from the audience. One from Luciana Alau, I believe, Instituto Crescer, and she asks how it was structured, the program to form and train the professors, the teachers. Did you have presential moments? Is it a continuous action? And how does it happen in practice?
Through the years, we've tried out pretty much everything. At the beginning, of course, it had to be presential. So when we were teaching, basically the use of laptops. The first survey we ran in 2007, 2008, most teachers didn't have a computer at home, didn't have internet connectivity. So we rolled out sort of classes, training classes throughout the country. They were presential mode. It was massive. It was very focused on using the technology, on using a laptop, on showing how to use the few applications that we were running in those XO machines, basically the sugar environment. After that, we began to be a bit more sophisticated. We had online courses, open online courses, closed online courses. We still do pretty much everything. We've moved a lot of the more basic training of how to use technology to virtual tutorships. So we hire companies that do online training. We've done a lot of video, small pills of trainings that are that we make available. We still do presential. More and more on the new stuff. So on the use of the maths platform, on the use of the CREA platform, on robotics, of course, and the whole LabTED technology. We are using presential. The other thing is we're also developing a cascade movement. We've got something we called, in primary school, we called the Maestro de Apoyo Ceibal support teacher, and they are, if you want, our focus teachers, where we work with them so that they know everything that we're doing, and they can help, from a teacher point of view, teachers in their schools on how to use technology, on how to use the platforms, on how to innovate using technology.
Very good. One question from Ana Lemos, obrigado pela sua pergunta. You mentioned that Uruguay is a small country and Brazil is a big country, an elephant, in which you need to do one step at a time. What do you think are the first steps to be given by Brazil?
No, I didn't say an elephant. You have to chop it up into bits that you can eat. That's what I meant. Not to do one thing at a time. I cannot say what Brazil should do. I can only say what we did in Uruguay. And the reason we did it was to fill out that gap, that digital gap. That was the driver, the motivation at the beginning and the push at the beginning. It was also quite important because Plan Ceibal became very quickly a state program, not a government program. It became a state program. The first time somebody tried to sell a laptop, we're talking about those little green horrible laptops with the two antennas. Somebody tried to sell it. The people in the market in Montevideo, somebody called the police because they knew that laptop belonged to a child. That laptop belonged to a child going to public education, and somebody called the police. That's the level of ownership that the society has of Plan Ceibal. We do surveys every year just to find out what people know about Plan Ceibal, and it still comes ranked as one of the top state programs year after year. And that's because it's become, as I said, it's a society program. That's the challenge. It's not a technology program. It's not a laptop program. It's become an education program, but it's more and more it's a state inclusion program.
I have a question from Gustavo Valentim, but before that, since you mentioned the laptops, at the time you opted for using the XO, right? The one laptop for child model. Do you think you should continue using that? Or do you think there are market alternatives now that are maybe cheaper, better quality? I don't know. What is your view on that?
When we started with the XO was the only laptop costing less than $1,000, and it costed a lot less than $1,000, that had a camera, that had pretty good internet access. So let's remember where we were in 2007. I said there were no iPhones, there were no smartphones. This was the first computer into most households in Uruguay. It was also the first camera. It was also the first video recording equipment, digital video recording equipment in most households. The first time a kid uploaded a video from a Ceibal laptop into YouTube, we didn't expect that. We hadn't imagined it. Now, the whole market for educational laptops, so under $200 laptops, used to be a subsegment of what were called netbooks. That market segment for netbooks has pretty much disappeared since iPads and tablets came about. Now, we still believe that a tablet is a very good way of reading. It's a very good way of surfing the internet. It's not a very good way of programming. It's not a very good way of using mathematics or doing exercises or writing. So at the moment we are in a phase seeing a change in technology. We've got other suppliers from more netbook type, more powerful laptops. But the XO is still a pretty strong contender because it's the one that we've got now is touch, so it's a touch machine. It can boot up with a Sugar environment. It can boot up with a Linux environment, and it can boot up with the Android environment. So it's a very powerful machine for technology use for kids aged 8 through to 11 or 12.
That makes a lot of sense. So now Gustavo's question: what is the type of evaluation in terms of qualitative analysis that you have done regarding the influence of technology in the schools? And what are the results you've got?
Good question. Now, we except for English, we haven't done educational evaluation for a variety of reasons. One, we're not an education organization. we've asked others to do it, and they've done research that shows something that I think we all know, and we all instinctively we all recognize, that is, a computer does not on its own does not teach a kid better language or better mathematics. It's the contents, it's the teacher that does that. Now, because we want to do more research and we want to do more evaluation, we've now created, in addition to the monitoring and evaluation department of Plan Ceibal, which monitors how projects are going, we've also created a Fundación Ceibal, which is a research think tank that's going to be doing research. The first major project that we're trying to do now is to evaluate how to measure the impact of something like the mathematics platform. The mathematics platform is a very strong tool, very powerful tool, but it's used in many different ways by teachers. Teachers use it in class. Other teachers use it to give homework, so flipping the classroom if you want, or using the classroom to teach theory and then telling the kids to go and do exercises at home. So it's using a variety of different environments. We need to understand how to measure it. It's very difficult to measure a tool that is used in so many different ways. Having said that, we do know that there's a lot of skills that kids have learned because technology is there. And we look at that when we look at, particularly in the digital labs, when we look at the use of or the fluency that these kids have after 6 to 7 years in use of social network, internet, and so on. That's part of their life now. It's part of all of our life, and we've contributed to make that happen.
I have a question from Amanda Bacalenic, I suppose, do Festival Path e do Panda Criativo. You mentioned some trouble with Society, teachers included at the beginning of the process and even now. How have you been building a trustworthy connection with people beyond your audience, people, contributors whose children don't access the network?
Well, by making it a fully 100% focused on public education. Public education in Uruguay, it caters for 85% of kids in primary school and 70% of kids in secondary school. So it's pretty much the whole country. That's our target group. That's who we work with. And we are constantly making sure that we have catered for all those kids. There was resistance at the beginning from teachers. We didn't ask them first, although the authorities saw that this was a powerful tool for them to use. They recognized the fact that, just like Mario said this morning, that the classroom had not changed in 150 years, and society has. So we needed to make that happen. As with any change, slowly but surely, people learned how to use the technology, saw the benefits of it. Of course, we've tried to make technology simpler. You know, even before Plan Ceibal, there was IT labs in most secondary schools. Those were provided by vendors. They went and put old IBM computers with Office, and the classes were how to use Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. Now we've changed that into something that teachers can use proactively and kids can use proactively. We tried to make it simpler. The story of the reader is a very good example. You know, the demand for textbooks was there to start with. First year, it didn't work very well because as soon as somebody downloaded, the reader wasn't very good. Everybody saw it was uncomfortable. The other kids didn't download them. As soon as we improved the reader, the downloads shot up.
Very good. Tem uma polêmica agora na Finlândia, que eles vão acabar com o ensino de letra cursiva. E é interessante porque eu já posso ver que algumas pessoas aqui estão precisando de fazer o curso de letra cursiva. Muitas letras muito bonitas, eu tenho que elogiar, mas algumas são bastante ilegíveis. Mas vamos lá. Uma pergunta aqui da Roseli Ferreira, da Prefeitura de São José dos Campos. How is the relationship of parents with technology and the kids that use them? Do you think the follow-up with the families has improved? I would like to invite you to know our program of the interactive schools in our city.
I'll be very interested to see what you're doing there, and so afterwards, please approach me and we'll exchange contacts. One of the things that we realized to start with is parents needed to know. This is a powerful asset in poor households. It was the first laptop. In some households, it wasn't the first one. It was the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one, and sometimes the fifth one, because that family had 5 children in school. So letting the families know how powerful it was something that we had to do. We did roll out training classes for parents. We're still running those training classes. We stopped measuring that now because it's pointless after 8 years. But I think after 2 or 3 years of Plan Ceibal, something like 75,000 people in Uruguay had used the internet for the first time using. I'm talking about adults using a Ceibal machine. Now we run a program aimed at, particularly in poorer households, poorer neighborhoods, to work with parents. And I'll be very blunt. We direct this at parents, but we get 95% of mothers and grandmothers. It's the mothers and the grandmothers who are more interested in learning about this than the parents, the fathers and the grandfathers. So there's something that we need to work on.
Question from Hugo Harada from Adaptativa about maintenance. Your data shows that 80% of the PCs work in average. Is that enough? And how much, in terms of percentage, do you spend with maintenance?
I had it on the chart. It's in terms of maintenance. No, on average, it's about 13-14% as we roll it out. It goes up and down because during summer, so from December through to March, we don't visit the schools, and that's where a lot of the repair gets done. And kids, as I said, don't approach the small kids in particular. Don't approach the repair centers by themselves. High school kids do, small kids don't. We would like to have all the laptops working all the time. We can't do that. We simply don't have the network to do that. Also, because we had to develop that network. Having labs repairing companies, it's all outsourced. But having companies repairing laptops in remote parts of Uruguay, it's quite complicated. You know, there wasn't a market for that. We had to develop that market. We had to build those companies. We had to accompany them through the learning process and the scaling up process in order to serve the market. We are, what we tell them is, look, we want you to grow in terms of more operations, so we want you to repair all the laptops all the time, and we want you to do it at a decreasing per unit cost, because it needs to be efficient and effective for us.
Very good. But I have another question for you. From Tatiana Clicks, I suppose. And she asks, I would like you to detail the platforms that are used by your school's networks and your teaching networks, for instance, for mathematics, English, etc.
For mathematics, we're using the main platform we call PAM, Plataforma Adaptativa de Matemáticas. It's a name that we've given to a platform developed by a German company called Bettermarks. It's an adaptive platform. It's online. There's also a version in tablet that they're finishing developing. It's extremely powerful. We've got a licensing agreement whereby we basically have the rights to deploy it in Uruguay, and we're deploying it in public sector schools and now also in private sector schools. In terms of the learning management system, last year we changed. We had another one first. The one we've got now is called Schoology. It's an American platform. It's one of the top contenders in terms of learning management systems platforms. We're working very closely with them in order to integrate it as much as possible to our systems. In English, there isn't a platform. There's a bunch of content, learning materials that support the classes that we deliver via video conference. They've been developed by us together with our main contractor for that program of English, which is the British Council. By the way, all these companies I'm mentioning all won competitive, open bidding processes. We are extremely we're fanatical about transparency and about getting access to the best possible platforms and suppliers in this world. But it's got to be competitive. So we are very fanatical about that. We're developing a teacher training platform on top of Schoology. We're developing a virtual training platform for teachers together with a Chilean platform called Tu Clase. And that's it, because the lab test is basically a collection of activities that we put together. So in terms of platforms, those are the main ones.
Right. One question I have for you. You mentioned there was resistance from different sectors to the plan. Was there resistance regarding connecting the schools? Was there resistance regarding the laptop program? Where did it come from, and how did you dealt with the resistance, and you still do?
Well, there was resistance at the beginning, of course, because, let's face it, teachers in Uruguay are not exactly the highest paid profession in the world. There is a lot of work to be done in terms of improving the pay grade of teachers, of improving the school infrastructure. There's a lot of work to be done there. Now, that's what happens with those $2,000 that we were talking about, and the government at the time and still now has an objective to improve that. Our side is on that 5% margin, and this is why that 5% for us is like, if we were a private company, that would be my gross margin or my sales target. To keep it at 5%. That's what we work all the time to make sure that whatever we're doing is that 5%. Because we think that 5% is well spent. Now, there was resistance. There was resistance from society. There was resistance from politicians. There was resistance from teachers. How do we deal with it? By providing something that works and providing and making it happen, making sure that the laptops work, making sure that more and more teachers are actively using that. We started in primary school. We started with first graders, and we moved up the school system. That was quite smart to do in order to make sure that there was a generation that always missed out, but we managed to get it into the hands of kids. Kids demand the use of laptops in primary school in particular. For them, it's a very important resource. Now, at the moment, we still have a little bit of teacher resistance. Occasionally, we get calls for the network. The Ceibal network is a protected network, and the computers connect to private networks at students' houses. Remember, the tablets and the laptops belong to the kids. In the Ceibal network, it's protected from sites for pornography and all those sites that the kids shouldn't go to. But it's not close to Facebook. It's not close to YouTube. It's not close to all those social networks that kids love to use. Occasionally, there's some call for them to be shut down at schools. The vast majority of the teachers don't want that. The school authorities don't want that. It's something that exists, that students and teachers need to deal with. And a lot of times they use them. They use them educationally.
That makes a lot of sense. Social networks, they have a very important application for education, in my view. So
And we're not Big Brother. We decided never to be Big Brother.
that's great. Do you collect data on the students over
No.
the network? Not at all. So you do not interfere. But you filter some sites like pornography and that.
Yeah,
sort of
we it's on a. We started with keywords, and we found out that of course keywords also filter out newspapers and other things. So we moved to a site-based. We contract a provider that says, okay, this site is known to be bad, and we filter them out.
Okay,
and that's it.
That makes sense. So, question from Ana Flávia: do the professors create digital objects for learning?
They do. We fund part of that. We fund the creation of open digital objects, which are put on the platform and in the Ceibal portal, available to all teachers. They can download them, adapt them, upload them back, and they create their own work, their own objects, and that's the power. The power of the platform is exactly that: is that a teacher can create or merge of a video with a text or with an animation, submit it to the kids, use it with the kids, and then use it again the following year, or use it with another class as she pleases. The power of the platform is exactly that: is to multiply that effort.
Very good. I learned we are completely out of time, so I have one remaining question. I'll handle it to you later. Maybe you can get in contact with the person that asked. I would like to thank you so much. Thank you, Gonzalo. I learned a lot from that experience. I hope Brazil follows similar steps than the ones Uruguay have done.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.